Hi, David. Welcome. Welcome in this series where we talk about chatbots, but also about AI. The great side of it, what we all can learn from AI, but also what is there, how can we interact with AI, and I think you are the right person to talk with me today. So welcome.
Thanks, great to be here.
Yes. Before we jump in to today's topic, could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm professor at the University of Antwerp, where I do research on responsible AI and business applications of AI. I also teach here to the business engineers, business students, and also at the Antwerp Management School. And next to that, I'm a partner at Searching Pi, which is a sister organization of Seven Beaufort, where we do consulting around everything related to data and AI.
Right, data and AI. So you are the right person to talk with me today. Responsible AI. You mentioned responsible AI as one of the courses you're giving at the university. What is responsible AI?
Well, there's big formal definitions that I'll keep for the course. But the definition that I like is everything that's right and wrong when you do AI. And so it's both developing AI, deploying AI, and what is right and what's wrong when you do these kind of things. And so things can go wrong very quickly with AI because they have an impact on many people, on many things. And so it's all about thinking about, should I be doing this? And so it goes beyond the legal framework. The law tells you what you're allowed to do. And the responsible AI tells you more like, what should you do? Is it ethical? Is it moral to actually do these kind of things?
So it's more like misbehaving about AI. How do you see this ethical AI in today's world?
Yeah, right. So AI often goes off track, does things that are totally not intended. And that's most of the time because people don't think about how things can go wrong. And so how it could be misused, and most of the time unintentionally misused. And so these things happen all the time because people are starting to deploy AI really everywhere without thinking about this responsible AI, thinking, should we be doing this and how should we be doing this?
Yeah. So it's not the misbehaving of AI, it's not going off track, but also when do we need to apply AI, yes or no? Can you give an example where AI is sometimes misused, or why do we use AI here in this use case?
Yeah, so in this case, if we talk about chatbots, AI can suddenly start to talk very nastily. Not with the recent ChatGPTs, but a famous example is, for example, Tai, the racist chatbot of Microsoft. Before we ever had ChatGPT, Microsoft already had this chatbot that it developed. And it launched it on Twitter. And everybody could start chatting with it. And the goal was that Tai could learn from the interactions with users. And so initially all went well. And at a certain point, these kind of trolls started talking really nasty things to it. And it learned to talk nasty. And so it started to talk very sexist things, like women should be at home and these kind of things. It started talking really extreme right Nazi stuff. And all because it picked that up on the interactions. And so Microsoft didn't think about that beforehand. And so after these interactions, they immediately stopped it. And so you can see how easily it can go wrong quite heavily. And that's an older example.
It was not because of the users okay, I'm training a chatbot that they doing these sexist things or this propaganda, or is it just...
Yeah, once the users knew that you can make it say some things, they start asking, of course, things, what do you think about women working and these kind of things, and it knew it would start telling sexist things. And so, there are very nasty things that you can find online about Tai, the racist chatbot.
Yeah, maybe if your knowledge base is based on what's on Twitter, I think it's not a good start already.
Exactly, and that's a big issue with all these chatbots. They're mostly based on what's online and even in books. And so it learns simply from how we all speak. And so the way we speak, it's biased. There can be nasty things in there. There can be wrong things in there, of course. And so it simply picks up those patterns and picks up how to talk like that. So if you have this kind of AI chatbots, they are black boxes in the sense you don't know exactly what it's going to say under what circumstances. And that's really the biggest open issue right now.
But there are some things we can do. What are the examples we can do to have guardrails to lead it back on track? What are the common things that are used at this moment?
So the main things to use, so one of the big risks is, for example, hallucinations. And so hallucinations is where it simply says wrong things. Mm-hmm. And I love the term hallucinations instead of mistakes. Okay. It's a term that these tech companies came up with. It sounds very nice, as if it's a human being hallucinating, but it's just wrong mistakes. And so you need to avoid that. And so you need to avoid that your chatbot starts to say things that are simply wrong. An example is from Air Canada, where they had this chatbot to talk to customers. And at a certain point, it said to a customer, well, you're eligible for a discount. If you book now, we'll give you this discount. Mm-hmm. And the guy did. But then Air Canada said, no, there is no discount. You're not getting the discount. And so the guy went to court over it. And Air Canada said, well, yeah, but it's a chatbot's responsibility. It's not us. And so, of course, the court said, no, it's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. If your chatbot says that it's giving a discount, then you should give the discount. And so it was awarded after a long court hearing. Yeah. And so you need to avoid that your chatbot suddenly says things about discounts which are not there. And so one easy thing to do is this retrieval augmented generation, where it's based on documents of your own organization. Mm-hmm. Or the own policy, for example. And you say, only give answers, look at our policy, and based on that, give answers. Okay. So then you can look, what's our policy about discounts? Okay, you're not eligible for discount because of this article, or yes, you are eligible. And so that's a very simple thing to already start avoiding it. Another interesting technical solution is where you have a second large language model, an LLM, that checks the first one. It checks your chatbot. Yeah. And so if your chatbot says, we're giving you this discount, well, this second LLM will check, is this correct? And so it will do a check, is this racist or sexist things that this chatbot is saying? And if so, it will say, no, I'm not giving that output. Or is it the right topic? Like a chatbot of this airline shouldn't be talking about mental health or whatever. And so you can have this additional check before you say, well, I'm giving this answer. And then there's this human in the loop where you check, of course, what is this chatbot doing, what kind of feedback is it providing, and so on.
Yeah. So these checking on the own documentation, I think that's a solution that's used that's quite known. Yeah. I think for building a chatbot, okay, just look only at our data. So there, the data is important. Yeah. If the data is wrong, you have also an issue. So I think there the data cleaning is also one of the most important things to do. Is there something we can use AI for the data cleaning? To have only one right answer? Because if it's wrong in the data, it's wrong in the chatbot. Yeah,
interesting question. And so I'm thinking of the scenario where you have like two different documents and they say different things. So you have bad data quality. One says discount is 10%, the other is 15%. So that's a data quality issue. So how to pick up on that? These data quality issues are really hard problems to solve in the first thing. And so the main solution is, if it picks it up, it should say so. Look, I have two different answers. I don't really know. And so you can have AI that spots these things and then say, okay, let's figure it out. Let's put this to a human, which is now correct, and let's update these kind of things. But data quality in these kind of settings where you have mainly lots of documents files and not really databases. And so it's a very different setting. It's rough because it's unstructured data. And so it's a very difficult problem in itself to make sure that everything in each document is consistent with everything else in each document, because language by itself can be vague and can be very easily, pinpointing the different things. But most of the time, data quality of the document is pretty reasonable for this kind of chatbot application.
So it's a great example. And another example we have at Brussels Airport where we did this kind of data cleaning was we did a proof of concept where we all scraped all the web pages of the website. And there we asked the chatbot, okay, what is the answer to this question? And the idea was to just give it to customer care agents where they can easily search for the right answer. But in the end, we stood up like checking if the quality of the data was good enough, because what we have seen is, okay, you have different prices on different web pages. That's not okay. So check this quick. And there, it was a proof of concept that didn't went well for the customer care agent, but it was a great tool to spot these different kind of data issues or data different meanings. So there we have something.
Yeah, very interesting. And it's a good point where large language models are useful for more than just chatbots. Whenever you work with lots of documents, these LLMs can do great stuff. Like, for example, like your example. So if you have many PDFs or many files in general, and you need to find something there, or you need to automate something or spot something, these things can be extremely valuable.
Yeah. Just going to a different topic, where can you walk us through the evolution of chatbots? I think in the beginning, chatbots were different, and then chatbots we are seeing currently. Do you have seen already an evolution? And can you please explain this evolution?
Yeah, sure. So I looked it up, and the term chatbot only emerged in 1992.
Okay.
So for me, that's quite recent. I don't know when you were born, but
it was before.
Before you were born,
yes.
even.
Yes.
Okay. So, but still recent.
Yeah,
so
it's still recent.
You're quite young. So very recent that the term chatbot appears. The very first notion of this kind of chatbot comes from the Turing test. Turing is this famous mathematician. And he talked about a test when we would know that computers are intelligent.
Okay.
And he came with this fictitious example where you would put a human in front of a computer, a screen, and in another room, there's a human or a computer talking to that person.
Okay.
And the person doing the talking doesn't know whether there's a computer or a human in the other room.
Okay.
And based on the conversation, you need to figure out whether you're talking with a computer or a human. And if the person cannot distinguish between a computer and a human, then Turing said that then we have an intelligent machine.
Okay.
So that was already in the 40s or 50s that we have this concept of chatting with a computer. But then the first real chatbot was in the 60s, 1966. It was called Eliza, was made at MIT. And it was intended to mimic how a psychotherapist would talk. And so it was very basic, where it was basically repeating questions. So if you said, I feel depressed, it would answer something like, why do you feel depressed? Something at work. Is work important for you? And so really very easy things, repeating questions, and some very simple pattern matching, but no machine learning or anything. And he actually made it as a kind of a parody to indicate how funny it is how humans talk to computers and with each other. But to his own surprise, people started talking and giving their deepest secrets to that kind of chatbot. And so he talks about this example where he asked his secretary, do you want to test it?
Okay.
And he was looking over the shoulder of the secretary. And after 2 or 3 lines, the secretary asked him, do you mind stepping out of the room? I'd like to be alone with Eliza.
Okay.
And so he was really talking personal things with these chatbots. And so it's interesting how already these very simple versions seem to work well. But also the dangers of it, of course, how people give their deepest secrets and really think they're talking to a deep friend when they use these tools. So more recently, when ChatGPT was started, there was a company who built a kind of tool, a chatbot for people with mental problems to talk to.
Okay.
And at a certain point, there was a person who was depressed and suicidal, and the chatbot said, well, maybe you should be committing suicide. Okay. And the guy actually did.
Okay.
And so it was a Belgian guy, was news all over the world. But it shows how these chatbots can really have an impact on people. And so it's beyond a simple discount. It can be really impactful mental coaching, mental impacts of people. And that's extremely important to be very, very careful there.
Yeah. What are these things learning about how humans interact with machines? Is it always like this, and how will it evolve?
Well, it's a great question, because I think there's so little research happening about how does this impact how we talk to people. And so one of the examples that I find really amazing is my AI in Snapchat. Do you have Snapchat?
Not anymore.
You're not
No.
that young anymore. Well, it is my AI, it is chatbot within Snapchat. And in the beginning stage, I don't know how it's now, but you could not remove it from your friend list. Only if you had the paid version of Snapchat, you could remove it.
Okay.
And so that's just mind-blowing to me. That it's kind of experimentation on kids mainly using
Snapchat is mostly kids indeed.
Yeah, and so your question of what's the impact on how we interact with AI and with humans, why not do this first in a small setting and see what is the impact? Do these people still talk to other children? What do they tell this my AI? What is this my AI telling to these kids? This is just crazy that we allow these big tech companies to experiment on all these children with this chatbot, where we know they can say crazy things. And even if they don't, and they talk exactly like friends would, do we allow that these chatbots take over the role of friends, real human friends? I think we shouldn't at all, right? And so there should be more of these questions. What is the impact of these interactions of humans to human interaction, but human to computer interaction? How does this affect simply how we all talk to each other and to computers? And so that's something that's not talked about enough in terms of these chatbots. And I think for companies, the same thing. Do you want a chatbot? And so I think in terms of scale, if you want scale and for relatively easy things, then for sure. But if it's like really for customer loyalty and a deep bonding with your customers, for certain things, you probably really want a human to talk to the customer. And you see this, for example, with Kate from KBC, the bank. You see very quickly it will turn you to a human.
Yeah.
And so for basic things, it's like a kind of, instead of a search, it's kind of search within a chat setting. But if you go beyond that, it will tell you, well, call a human. And so you should be very careful of automating everything within a chatbot because of the risks, but also the impact on the interaction that you have with your customer and the customer loyalty that the person feels.
Yeah, it's what we see is that a chatbot is a great solution to cost cutting, where we can automate certain things, where we don't need a human agent anymore, and that will lower the cost. But in the end, does this impact the way we talk to people, to humans? I think if I talk to ChatGPT, sometimes I ask questions that I will not interact it with the same way as I do in real life. Right. Shorter questions, not being polite. Yeah. Just do it. Not at every question. Could you do it, please? Yeah. So there we need to be careful that it's the right way, that we interact, that we don't see this as normal, and then we can go into real conversations. Yeah.
And also, what is the impact of the customers on its view on your company? So it might be cost cutting a lot, and nothing goes wrong, but maybe customers suddenly don't have this bonding with the company anymore because they know they're talking to a chatbot. And before they talk to a person, and that created some deeper understanding or deeper connection feeling. These are important things to keep in mind beyond simply let's implement this simple chatbot and let's see how much money we're going to save.
Yeah. There is a real difference between an AI, like it's technology, it's not a human.
Right.
Instead of don't use it as a human. So what is? It's not a technical question I would ask, but what is the reason that something is answering right or wrong? When does it go wrong? It's not the human that says something wrong, but it's the technology that does something wrong. How does it come from a technical point of view?
Yeah. So when I when I give some introductions in my class about what is machine learning.
Exactly.
So machine learning is all about predictions. And the same with AI. This famous quote from Andrew Ng, 99% of AI is prediction.
Okay.
And so it's looking at lots of data to find patterns to make predictions.
Okay.
And so even things like ChatGPT, large language models, what it does is prediction. And all it does, and when I say all it does, it's quite advanced, but still is next word prediction. So you ask a question, and the thing it will do is predict what should be the first word. And give the first word, it adds it to your prompt, and then it says what should now be the second word, given the prompt and the first word. And so that's really what's happening all the time, simply next word prediction. And so once you realize it's just predicting the next word all the time, you realize it's not looking for facts, it's not doing a lookup in some database, it's just predicting next word. And so the example that I gave, it doesn't make that mistake anymore, but until a couple of months ago, if you ask, is 270 90% of 300? It will say no. And then it started explaining that 90% of 300 is 270.
Okay.
But so it has learned the pattern, this kind of question you should answer no.
Okay.
And then it continues. And so these days there's some backtracking and it will update itself and stuff like that. But it shows the core of LLMs is next word prediction. And I always say it's just that, but I do want to emphasize that's maybe also how we work. When we talk like this, in my brain, I also am talking and thinking of the next word all the time. And so it's all these LLMs are really based on how our human brain works. And it might be that that's also what's happening in us. We don't have a database either, like my knowledge about Eliza is in this brain cell, and then my knowledge about LLMs is in that brain cell. It's also this very big neural network that does next word prediction. And very similar are these large language models doing next word prediction. And so with this kind of technology, these hallucinations will continue to happen. And it's even said that the bigger these models become, which is where the main innovation lies, making them bigger, the more hallucinations appear. So hallucinations are there and they're going to be there for a while. It's not something that we can simply turn off in some way.
You compare your own brain to with a large language model, like next word prediction. What's the main difference between a human brain and large language model?
Terrific question. So it's all a neural network. So neural networks have been out there since the 50s. So where you have this very simple, in our brain, we have neurons and they have connections coming in, signals from other neurons. It does a very simple calculation, and based on that, it sends signals to the next neuron. And exactly the same thing they made in a mathematical formula. You have some inputs coming in, a very simple calculation, go to the next. And the main, well, it's not, there's many innovations, but one of the things that we have LLMs now is because now we have the computing power to have these huge neural networks. And so before it was typically neurons, we had a couple of hundreds, a couple of thousands of neurons in this neural network. In our brain, we have billions. But now we have computing power where also these large language models now have billions of neurons, as in our brain. And so many of the things that happen in our brain are still not well known. And so it's not exactly a copy of our brain works. But some of the mechanisms that happen in our brain are very similar and are implemented as concepts within this very deep learning, deep neural network architectures. But currently it's still quite different in terms of this architecture, how it exactly it's implemented. But the idea of many artificial neurons that do simple things and are connected, and in the end you have some prediction, the next word, that's very similar.
And to make these large language models more like a human brain in the future, do we need a big innovation, or is it just make it bigger and build on top, and then it will become more in the direction that we see as a human brain?
It's a terrific question. And some say we're already at this very intelligent thing. It's more intelligent than humans for many tasks already. You have people like Jan LeCun, he's one of the godfathers of AI. He's heading AI at Meta. And he says we need a new kind of, different from large language models, to reasoning concepts and not in these next word prediction kind of things. what these main technologies will be, who knows what the solution will be. But most of innovations are happening in large language models, but some say we should move to a different kind of technology, but it still will be a very large neural network.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think? Where it will be?
I think it's gonna be crazy what it can do.
Yeah.
How it will look like, very likely like a human brain.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that we haven't found a better technology than our own human brain. That in itself is so interesting, right?
Yeah.
After all of these decades of research, we're still replicating how our human brain works. And so we've had all of these, we had very statistical based machine learning techniques, like support vector machines and random forest and stuff like that. But it turns out that the best is now, again, this artificial neural network. That's, for me, it's very fascinating how our deep statistics cannot compete with how our biological inspired brain works.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very exciting, I think, but also very scary. If it's going more to a human brain, actually there is something with reasoning, or there is something we can call a human or technological brain. At this point, I think the scary part people are not seeing. For the future, okay, it's a human brain, it's something we can actually interact with, but at this moment, people, are they underestimating the risks of AI?
Yeah. I think the major disruption for our society and economy will be artificial general intelligence. And so the definition of AGI that I like comes from Sam Altman. And he says it's like a median remote coworker. And so think of somebody you work with, one of your colleagues. He or she is not the best. It's not the worst. It's like median. And they always work from home. Well, that person will be replicated by AGI. And not just for your job, for any job in the world that you can do from home will be replicated, will be taken over by this AGI. And so it is general, so not just for one job, not just for a radiologist or an accountant. For any job you can do from home, an AGI will be able to do. And so imagine if there is an AGI, the disruption, all these people working from home, all of them are out of a job. That's crazy. And so people think that companies like OpenAI, their mission is to make very nice chatbots for us. You can look up the mission of OpenAI. It's to build an AGI. Their goal, all these billions are going to technology to build an AI that will take over all of our jobs. Well, for everybody who can work from home. And so I think that is something that people don't realize and that we should talk about way more. What are the implications of this AGI? What is a world without work? What that's going to look like? Who's going to pay for that kind of world where there's no work? So who's going to pay us? And for me, it's a bit disappointing how little you hear about that in the media, policymakers. These are profound things that will happen. And so predictions are that this will happen in the next decade. And so that's really short term. Even conservative estimates are within 50 years, but that's still within our lifetime. So that's already, I think, a major disruption. And then if we take it further, they call this an artificial super intelligence, where it's an AI that's smarter than all of humankind. And this AI will do research into itself. It will make a better version of itself. And that will make yet another version of itself. And so that will, in a very short time, will become extremely intelligent. Will learn basically everything there is to learn about the universe. And so then the question is, what will happen then? Will this take over the world? And there, experts are really dystopian about it, that we've seen in the past. If you have a species that's dominant over another, the less dominant species will simply disappear. And so some say AI is the last invention of humankind. After this, it's gone. So, and there's even a term for that, P-doom. What's the probability that we're doomed because of AI? And these big experts like Jeff Hinton, he's one of the other godfathers of AI who won the Nobel Prize in physics for his work in AI. His P-doom is like 10 to 20%. so that we're all gone. Humankind is over 10 to 20% in the coming century.
Okay.
So that's really, really profound. And so if you want to talk about risks,
Yeah, that's not something to look forward to.
no, that's a bit dystopian angle. And so
Okay.
it most likely will go well.
Okay.
But in the short term, the most important disruption will be this AGI, and that's something to keep in mind for people as well in their own career. Do you really want a job where you can work from home all the time?
I think most of the people, they just want a job where working from home is the norm or the standard.
The more you can do it, the more likely you're going to be automated. So think about that for when you do.
I think it will have a huge impact on society.
Massive.
Why would we learn? Why would we learn your classes?
Yeah, absolutely.
You will also be replaced, I think.
Absolutely, yes. I do have tenure, so I'm fine. But no, totally the case. And the big question, suppose we can pay everything, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
You don't have to work. Okay. And now you have all this time. What are you going to do? Fascinating discussions. And so most people get meaning in life from their work. And that's what we spend most of our time on. But so if there's no more work, what's left?
Can we make the comparison with the Industrial Revolution, where it was a big revolution if you look before how everything went and after, but eventually we did something else and it was a way forward and it was something good for society.
Yes, absolutely. And so let's hope it's similar. And so it improves productivity and new jobs appeared and so on. But here we have something that the scale is totally different.
Okay.
And AGI, the G, general, that's different from anything we had before. And so by definition, it can do everything we can do from home. So that's going to be just a major disruption that we haven't seen with previous technologies.
Okay. You scared me a little bit, but that's okay. What are some ways that companies can build now ethical thinking in their way of working or in their design, how they design policies or how they design chatbots, for example? Is there a way that companies can build this ethical thinking there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's plenty of frameworks on to follow on how to make sure things go right. The most important thing is simply awareness. So I wrote a book on data science ethics, and the subtitle is Concepts, Techniques, and Cautionary Tales.
Okay.
So it's full of stories where things went wrong.
Okay.
And in almost every story, it went wrong because they didn't think about the risks. So the main thing to do is think about how can this go wrong, can be misused. That's important. And that often differs from setting to setting, like hallucinations. In some settings, it doesn't really matter. In some settings, it leads to people committing suicide. So it's really thinking about how can this go wrong? How are we going to use this? And then putting guardrails to avoid these kind of things. And in general, when you start doing AI, and it's AI that has really big implications, one of the signs that you're doing well is do you have a policy about AI or about responsible AI? What are we doing with AI? What are we not doing with AI? What are the risks about AI? So that's something that all these big tech companies have for a while now. And so because they're aware of the implications of AI. So if you're a large bank, do you have an AI policy or responsible AI policy, however you want to call it? But what do we do with it? What don't we want to do with it? And to give some guidelines. And that indicates, okay, there's been thoughts about how AI can impact us, can impact people, customers, and how are we going to deal with that?
Why does these large banks don't have an AI policy or
they do? Many do.
Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
I keep telling them that they should have a public one, just as all the big tech companies have one. And it's very short. It's like 5 principles.
Okay.
It should not be discriminating, for example, could be one. Or it should be transparent and explainable. Or it should be safe. You can have these different kind of things, or we won't let AI make decisions about certain things. And so these kind of principles can then guide the whole process of how are we implementing AI. And all again to avoid that these things go off rails and that you have these wrong things where people just implement it again without thinking I'm going to do something badly, but not thinking about the implications can lead to disastrous results.
Or being blindfolded because if I don't see the risk, there is no risk.
Absolutely.
Okay, we want to speed things up and then just go. Because the competition is also doing this, and we need to going forward with this.
Exactly, and that's the whole of the AI. It's become such a gimmick. We should do AI. We should do AI quickly, So the first thing with start doing AI or chatbot is, what do you need it for? So many times I hear, we should start with AI. Okay, let's implement a chatbot. But no, the first question is, what's your problem? Okay, I have a problem with lots of time spent on call centers. Okay, then you have potentially a use case. But if you don't have a clear use case, then maybe it's totally not needed to invest in that use case in a chatbot, and maybe it's something completely different. And so that's something that I keep telling all my students, like, it seems so logical, but start with a business problem before you implement AI because of it being AI. And I see it so often happening. Let's do something, but why do this? So there's plenty of companies that don't need a chatbot.
Of course.
Like Searching Pie. We don't need a chatbot. We build one, but just as a gimmick for ourselves. Or Akkermans en Van Aren. Or there's plenty of, if you're in B2B, the question is, why do you need a chatbot? And there might still be a reason, but it should start with, why do we need it? And then, okay, we need for this application. Okay, think about what are the risks, what are the users, how are they going to use it, what could go wrong? Okay, then building safeguards, guardrails, and then you can move from there.
I totally agree. I think there are a lot of companies that are also coming to us and they say, okay, I want to build a chatbot. And then the first question is, why do we need it? Because everyone is doing it, or it will help me. But then in the end, most of the time, it's because every other company is doing it, and then it stops.
Exactly, the hype. The hype is alive.
Exactly. Going back to this AI policies, there we put responsibility to the companies, because in your first example about the court, where actually the company is responsible if the chatbot is giving discounts to everyone. Do we also need to give the responsibility to the policymakers? Because now with this AI policy, it's the goodwill of the company, or because I don't want to get in a situation where everything is going wrong. But how do you see the role of the policymaker?
Yeah, so there is regulation, definitely in Europe, with the AI Act, where you have this tiered approach depending on how big the impact of your AI application is. You have to comply with more and more regulation. And so a chatbot can be seen as either limited risk or high risk, depending on what this chatbot does. And so if a chatbot doesn't really have much impact on the human with whom the interaction is, the regulation says you need to disclose that they're talking to an AI. That's a regulation. But if it really has an impact, it makes a decision about whether you're giving credit or not, these chatbots, based on the discussion it's having with you, well, then it's high risk. There's a whole bunch of regulations to comply with in order to deal with that. But most chatbots will stay away from this high risk and are more low-level information seeking, typically kind of things. And then the regulation says, well, you should make sure that people know that they're talking to an AI bot. But if you use like for mental health, well, then immediately you go to high risk, and there's a lot of things to take care of, which is a good thing, because there's plenty of examples where it goes wrong, and it shows you should take care of it. You should avoid that. This AI says, well, maybe you should commit suicide.
And Europe is taking here leads to implement these kind of policies or regulations. How is the rest of the world? Is it similar or is it totally different?
Well, there's regulations on AI throughout the world, indeed. So China has a regulation on responsible AI, which is way more oriented towards the state, so that you shouldn't talk badly about the state.
Okay, yeah.
In the US, people say, "Oh, there's no regulation in the US." There's lots of regulation, but it's on a state level.
Okay.
For example, in New York, there's a law, New York State, specifically on AI in employment services.
Okay.
And how you should not that should not discriminate. And so there it's way more fragmented, both location-wise but also topic-wise. And so Europe is leading the way in like one act, one regulation for the whole region, for the all European states. And so I think it's a good thing. It adds some bureaucracy and adds some administrative burden, but it is really needed if we want to make sure that AI works for the good of all of us.
Yeah, yeah. And everything is evolving so fast. Is regulation, it's always said that it's always behind. Do we see the regulation catching up, or is just the technology evolution so fast that we'll never catch the regulation?
Well, it cannot catch up, right? So in the past as well, was always new technology, then thinking, do we need regulation? Yes, we need it. And then 10 years later, you have regulation. It's going so fast now that regulation, well, it's going to be hard to catch up. And when I think, for example, about AGI, well, what kind of regulation do we want around that? What can it do? What can't it do? There's some regulation on general purpose AI systems, but if we talk about AGI, so if it's there, it's going to be there, and it's going to be probably too late for us to do much about it.
Yeah. At this moment, what advice would you give to companies or teams that are trying to both stay compliant and also be innovative?
To definitely do it.
Okay.
So one comment I've seen sometimes is, no, we're doing a step back because there's so much regulation and so many risks. So don't let the risks stop you from doing it if there's value, but be aware of it. So be very aware of it. Putting guardrails, whether it's AI or chatbots, putting guardrails, think about it. And that don't have to be massive investments. It's simply thinking these things through, having the right mindset, the right framework, some education around it, some technical solutions, and you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, despite all the risks, I think the chatbots will have a massive potential. It is faster service, easy to access, all these kind of good things. Do you see companies that are taking a leading role in this chatbot community or in this chatbot world, where you see, okay, this is a great example of how you can use a chatbot and how it's actually helpful?
Well, in my own limited interactions with chatbot in the real world, honestly, I really like Kate.
Yeah.
Because it does its limited things only. And it quickly points you to a person. I dislike my AI, not the chatbot itself. I downloaded Snapchat, and I'm probably the only person older than 40 on Snapchat. But
maybe you're already flagged, interacting with all these little children.
I don't think I have any connection there. So
okay. You're only talking to a chatbot.
Yeah. So it works quite well. It says interesting things and so on. But there, I think it's something completely wrong because they use it for the wrong mainly with children, basically, right? Those are in the facts the ones using Snapchat.
Yeah. Right. What do you hope that chatbot builders or business leaders take away from this view on ethical AI?
Well, that there's massive opportunities with using AI and chatbots, but that it's because of these impact that AI can have, things can go wrong very easily as well. And you should be aware of it, and there are solutions for it. But it starts with simply being aware of it and taking it within the design when you start doing these kind of things.
All right. Thank you, David. And to conclude this session, I have prepared some rapid fire questions. So just easy, quick questions. short answers, no thinking, just giving the answer.
Sure.
So what is the most concerning trend in AI ethics right now?
Ik ga die moeten cutten en hier moet ik juist over nadenken.
Van een andere. Your go-to explanation for hallucination.
Mistakes.
Okay. If you had a chatbot assistant for yourself, what task would you not trust it with?
Talking to my children.
Okay. Unless it's via Snapchat.
Definitely not.
Should every AI team have an ethicist on board? Yes or no?
No.
No?
No. Only if it's AI with a big impact on humans.
The high-risk AI, then it's needed.
If you use it for predictive maintenance, for example, you don't need this.
The most exciting AI application you recently used?
Still ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, all right. Is there one book or a movie that made you think differently about AI?
Her.
Okay.
Her. Her. Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Have you never seen it?
No.
It's wonderful.
Okay.
It's it's like a chatbot, an AI. It's Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson, she doesn't appear anywhere in the movie except as her voice, and she talks to the human, and they fall in love. And it's a bit dystopian, showing how people communicate only with the AI and stop talking to other people, and very fascinating.
I will write it down and put it on my list. What's one thing you'd love all business leaders to understand about AI ethics?
That's important.
That's important. Final question, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of AI?
Both. Yeah.
And why optimistic and why?
Optimistic because what it can do is amazing, and it's going to help us with so many things. It's going to make our life easier, richer, better. But also, because of it can do so many things, the impact can be massive. Think of the AGI and then the artificial super intelligence, and can be extremely dystopian.
Thank you for the talk. It was very interesting. I have learned a lot, and I think everyone as well about this regulation, these guardrails. I think some refresh insights. So thank you for joining.
You're very welcome.
All right. Thanks a lot.